Hi, I'm Vanessa and I love bad Star Trek. I will be the freezer burn human popsicle that is season 1 of Star Trek's Next Generation. Today, I will be talking to you about an episode called The Neutral Zone, a completely unasked for remake of a original series classic, Balance of Terror. And every single thing that made that episode work, urgent stakes, great dialogue, tension that was mutually felt by both characters and audience alike, isn't here. Seriously, just watch Balance of Terror. There's no reason to watch The Neutral Zone because nothing happens. There doesn't appear to be a plot to speak of, which is a weird but appropriate note for season 1 to leave off on. This is, to reiterate, the last episode of the season. Aside from maybe the last episode of the Enterprise, I think this may be the worst season finale that Trek has ever done. Just to give some background, in Balance of Terror, the Enterprise was informed that several star bases along the edge of a neutral zone were being destroyed. A neutral zone behind which a mysterious race known as the Romulans reside, who belong to an isolationist society who haven't been seen outside of Romulus by the Federation at that point. No one had a visual record of what they or their ships even looked like. So the Enterprise flew in blind to their tactical advantage. And after a very tense cat and mouse game, the Enterprise makes visual contact with the attack ship and discover to their shock that the Romulans look eerily similar to Spock. Eerily, get it? Because ears. After a bridge crew member makes a comment under his breath that implies very heavily that Spock himself must be a Romulan spy, Captain Kirk delivers one of my favorite lines in the entire franchise.
Well, here's one thing you can be sure of, mister. Leave any bigotry in your quarters. There's no room for it on the bridge. Do I make myself clear?
Because I agree so hard that bigotry must be called out immediately and that person made an example of. So there was tension, world building, messaging about bigotry, and every action had a proportionate consequence. I think Balance of Terror, which I actually just recently watched, is just about perfectly written and absolutely stands up to the test of time, granting it classic status. The Neutral Zone should have never happened, never mind be a season finale. They should have just called the episode "Several Things Happen in a Row and No One Cares." The first thing that happens is that while Picard is at an emergency meeting off of the Enterprise, Data finds a bit of space junk and wishes to explore it. Riker's like, "We don't care about no olden dayses."
Request permission to investigate this vehicle. Why, Data? It's just a derelict. It is a piece of history. The opportunity to examine such an ancient vehicle does not come around very often.
And Data and Worf then find some capsules on board the ancient and abandoned ship. And after playing the worst ticket scratch-off game ever, gross skeleton, what do I win? 618 bones. Anyway, Data finds some better preserved human sickles and wants to play dollies with them. So he beams them into sickbay, and this results in one of the most unintentionally awkward interactions in Trek between Beverly and Picard.
The people Data beamed over.
I wasn't aware that he had.
Well, he did. And they were frozen. I thawed them.
You what?
Well, I didn't know what else to do. The crypts in which they were frozen were literally falling apart.
So these folks are cryogenically frozen for 400 years after dying of things that are now curable. And they're just being revived. And everybody starts off looking down on cryonics, even though it clearly fucking worked. At least in this episode.
Cryonics. It was a kind of fad in the late 20th century. People feared dying. It terrified them.
In real reality, cryogenics is just like a huge waste of energy to refrigerate bodies for a reason that may never come into fruition. But the characterization of 20th century people being uniquely afraid of death is pretty strange. Like, at that point, they just would welcome death with open arms. What the hell was the point of that line? These folks are understandably in the dark regarding anything that's going on around them. They don't know what the Federation is. They don't know what Starfleet is. Everything is new to them. The woman, after she wakes up, immediately faints because she sees Worf, and it's such a shock to her system to see an alien. And what does Picard do to bridge the gap, to help them adjust? He judges them. He also chides Data for beaming them aboard in a way that is mind-blowingly dehumanizing.
I could not leave them there, Captain. The condition of their vehicle was deteriorating.
But Data, they were already dead. I mean, what more could have happened to them? Now, we're gonna have to treat them as living human beings.
Everyone seems to come to a silent agreement that these people are being anachronisms must also mean that they're irreversibly stupid. It'd be like meeting an American colonist today, but instead of letting them know how fucked up slavery is and how continuing to subjugate other human beings also is, saying instead, ha ha, you're so stupid with your powdered wigs and no medicine, and you just cut your finger and bled into a tray and thought that cured syphilis. You're a fucking idiot. Who wins in this interaction? So anyway, the three stooges they thought out, I don't remember their names, and it doesn't really matter. So let's go with Daddy Warbucks, Betty Crocker, and Kenny Rogers. Warbucks is a financier and a pain in the ass. He died of a heart problem, but Beverly patched him up and he's just fine. Betty Crocker cries the entire time about her family being dead. She was frozen after dying of an embolism. And Kenny Rogers just wants to have a good time. He died after a lifetime of a great time. Which brings out Picard's bone to pick once again with anyone who uses drugs.
Sounds like someone who hated life. Yet he had himself frozen, presumably, so he could go through it all again.
These characters' dialogue can be condensed to a single word being repeated over and over for each one. Money, money, money. Fam, fam, fam. Women, women, women. Riker is assigned to keep them out of Picard's way for a while because remember, as previously stated, this is a Balance of Terror remake. Gotta meet up with some Romulans because some star bases went boom. But unlike Balance of Terror, we don't see or interact with the Romulans until just about the end of the episode. So funnily enough, the neutral zone spends most of the episode on the way to the neutral zone. And watching these three stooges struggling to adjust while most of the bridge crew is already convinced that they're completely stupid. Warbucks keeps whining and being entitled and demanding that I need a phone call because my Swiss bank accounts have accrued fuck you quantities of money. Certainly in the time they've been frozen, he's fantasizing about all the stuff and the people he's gonna buy. No one thought, hey, why not explain to him that the economy as he knew it doesn't even exist, even kind of anymore. Education, healthcare, shelter, and food are all provided for, and there's essentially no infrastructure for greed to exploit anybody anymore. No, they can't sit him down and explain that. He's too dumb to have a straightforward conversation, they assume. So instead, after Warbucks uses the intercom on the room's replicator to contact the bridge directly, Picard stomps back there like a pissed off dad, mainly just to yell at Warbucks for using the intercom, but also to preach to him about how more evolved humans have become, which is ironic because Picard's shitty attitude makes me question that theory.
A lot has changed in the past 300 years. People are no longer obsessed with the accumulation of things. We have eliminated hunger, want, the need for possessions. We've grown out of our infancy.
If the only reason for human advancement is to be stuck-up xenophobic asshole about it, who the hell would want to join the Federation or Starfleet? It just undermines the entire inclusive ethos of the show to have this attitude. Betty Crocker, the homemaker, a job, by the way, that likely still exists, but they really gotta lean into them being from the stupid, ignorant olden days.
Occupation, homemaker. Must be some kind of construction work.
And she is solely concerned with finding her family, who of course are mostly dead. They don't give her much else to say or do. But it is worth noting that she's the only person who has any emotional reaction to being so out of time.
I keep thinking about my boys.
Counselor Troy, will you report to the guest lounge?
Now, Kenny Rogers starts off as being rather affable, gregarious, easygoing, likes the replicated martini, and sees this new life as an opportunity to just meet new people and have new experiences. But then he makes a very strange request.
Why don't you come back later on? You and me will find us a couple of low-mileage pit woofers and help them build a memory.
I had to honestly Google what a pit woofie is, and it means like a NASCAR version of a groupie. Live your life. A low mileage one presumably means a young one, creepy. He then goes to Beverly thinking that she'd just give him some drugs. Like he's a drug dealer. Hook me up.
Well, I just gotta have a little something to jumpstart the morning, a little something else to shut down the night.
You have no medical need.
Well, it ain't a matter of need, darling. It's a matter of survival.
Sorry.
Yeah, and he also assaults her. I would have appreciated any consequence happening after that. Why not talk about how women in the 24th century are supposed to be treated as equals at that point, and that assault is not okay? But TNG itself doesn't live in that reality yet, apparently. All this is happening before the big important meeting with the Romulans. By the way, blowing up starbases is apparently what the Federation thinks is a good conversation starter for a possible diplomatic relationship. After 60 years or so of radio silence, the script seems to make some mention of, but never really explores, Worf's feelings about his Klingon parents being murdered by the Romulans. It's mentioned earlier in the season. This is where the neutral zone and balance of terror could have had a very strong connection. It seems really obvious. It's reduced to Worf just having an outburst on the bridge that quickly gets silenced by Picard.
These are Romulans. They are without honor. They killed my parents in an attack on Kitamar when they were supposed to be our allies. They believe humans and Klingons are a waste of skin.
Lieutenant, control your emotions.
Like in Balance of Terror, they really don't know what they'll be up against exactly, so they task Deanna Troi with doing research. Not sure why they asked the ship's counselor to do that when Data is obviously more qualified in that regard.
They seem to be creatures of extremes. One moment violent beyond description, the next tender.
So the episode ends with the Enterprise contacting a Romulan ship, and it turns out that they too have lost some starbases. And right there is when Daddy Warbucks shows up on the bridge to heckle the Romulans.
They haven't got a clue. They're hoping you know, but they're too arrogant to ask.
You're out of line, mister.
So the Romulans sort of threaten Picard and literally say, "We're back."
Your presence is not wanted. Do you understand my meaning, Captain? We are back.
What? And that's kind of the end of that conversation. The whole episode built up to that. God, this episode's so painful. Picard says that they're going to drop off the frozen folk onto a starbase before heading off somewhere else. And then Riker expresses, surprisingly, an interest in bringing these people back to Earth themselves to get to know them, because they're from another time.
It's a pity we can't take them there ourselves. Having them on board is like a visit from the past.
Yo, you've been patronizing, condescending, and shitty to these people the whole time, and now you want to get to know them?
Well, from what I've seen of our guests, there's not much to redeem them. Makes one wonder how our species survived the 21st century.
Fake. God. But Picard just continues with, "Fuck the olden days, as we gotta go forward."
That would take us in the wrong direction. Our mission is to go forward. And it's just begun.
Which is weird because he's like a hobby archaeologist. He loves the past. What the fuck is up with this episode? There was no point to any of it. There's nothing superior or worthwhile about grabbing someone out of their time to call them an idiot for not knowing something you take for granted. To even mention this episode in the same breath as Balance of Terror is completely absurd. Worf presented an opportunity to connect these two episodes together, and they completely fumbled the ball and focused instead on these people popsicles who get chastised for being money hungry, but assaulting women gets a free pass. I don't understand this episode at all. At all. The only fun thing about it is Data possibly running away with Kenny Rogers to go party.
What say, son? You'd make a hell of a side man.
That offer does present a certain fascination.
Make this a spin-off. Make this a spin-off. Data and the Pit Woofie coming to ABC. I'm definitely also doing season 2 because it is rough as fuck. It's gonna take me a long time to get through bad Star Trek. It really is. There's a lot of it. Till next time, I guess.